All right, we're live. I'd like to officially welcome everyone to this community chat. This is the first community chat hosted by Ezibota since its launch. So this is actually quite a special chat for us as the team. And we'd like to welcome everyone for joining us today. We'd like to also put a special welcome out there for Vivian, our co-moderator for the day. We know she's going to do a great job. Thank you for coming in. We're just going to start out with some introductions. Um, I'd like to maybe start off with Vivian. If you could please just introduce yourself to the chat and who you are, where you're from, what you're doing, and why you're here actually. So, Vivian, over to you. Vivian, please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. My name is Vivian. I'm currently an undergrad at Rutgers University studying political science and international affairs. I also run OurAfricaBlog.com, currently based in New Jersey, originally from Kenya. I'm here because I got invited by Beulah. I thought it was going to be a great opportunity to meet different people who share common ideas and learn more on how we could expand each idea to create something bigger.
Excellent, Vivian. Thank you for that introduction. And it's really a pleasure for us to have you here today. Vincent, the platform is yours. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Okay, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Vincent. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Okay, my name is Vincent Chukwuemeka. I'm originally from Nigeria. I was born and raised in Cameroon. I got my master's degree from the University of Northern Iowa in public policy. I work for Wells Fargo right now as a tax research officer, and basically that's all.
Thanks, Vincent. Appreciate that. Onyinye, the platform is yours. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, what you're doing, and why you're here today.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Onyinye. I am originally from Nigeria, but have lived all over the United States since I was 6, hence the lack of an accent. I am an artist, a visual artist, and I also work for an international nonprofit that works with young girls and women in Africa and Latin America. And I'm here because I wanted to interact with all of you and just get the chance to meet some of the other young Africans involved in this project. So.
Excellent. We're glad and happy that you're here today. Marilyn, your turn now. Please introduce yourself.
You can hear me now?
Marilyn, can you hear me?
Yeah, now you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, my name is Marilyn. I come from Cameroon, from the French part, so I basically speak French, not English. I currently live in the United States with my daughter, and I'm running a blog on Tumblr speaking about African women exclusively, and I'm passionate about non-profit organizations concerning African women and girls, especially. And I'm here because I want to share my ideas with you. I'm studying international business, and after I want to do international relations. And that's it.
Thank you, Marilyn. We really appreciate that. Do you want to introduce your daughter as well?
I think that's a no.
All right, Marilyn. Maybe she didn't catch that. Anyway, we also have Chinwe in the
I'm
house.
sorry, now
Chinwe?
I can hear you well. She's calm.
All right, it's cool, man. We're also happy that your daughter is here, man. We know she's an important part of your life. So we're
Yeah.
glad that we can interact with her a little bit in her own way. So which I think is quite awesome, and I think it's a first for our community chat. So we're happy about that. So Chinwe, over to you.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Chinwe. I was born in Nigeria, raised mostly in California. I've been all over California, and if you know anything about the state, it's quite large. I am one of the exec board members of Ezibota. I am a lawyer by profession. Um, and I'm really excited about this chat. I think it's going to be interesting to hear what you all have to say, and I can't wait to get going. All right, nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, Chinwe. Miss B, you're
Yes.
up.
Oh, okay. My name is Bilo Sweke. I'm Nigerian. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. I currently live in Philadelphia in pursuit of my master's degree in clinical psychology. Um, I am the founder of Ezibota, and I'm really excited about this chat because this is we're basically going to be discussing why people like me do what we do. So Vivian, Mary Lynn, why we feel that we need to create these spaces in order to have these various conversations or create these communities. So I'm excited to hear about everyone's ideas, everyone's input, and I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Beulah. And finally, maybe let me just introduce myself. My name is Papi. I'm based in Johannesburg, in South Africa. Um, I'm currently studying. I'm doing a master's in business at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. Um, I'm a contributing writer for Ezibota, and I'm also tasked with moderating our community chats. Um, the reason why I'm here is the same reason why I am a part of Ezibota. It's one of those platforms that I think are very critical for collaboration between Africans on the continent and in the diaspora. It's run by a formidable team of ladies that trust me, they know what they're doing, and that's one of the reasons why I think I'm a part of that. And we're hoping that these community chats and the other initiatives that we're running, either through our online platform and any other initiatives that we're running, is to try and uh, bring people together and collaborate and share ideas and where possible, also conduct some commerce. So I think that's the main reason why I'm part of this. And I think today we have quite an exciting theme in front of us. I think I'm very interested to understand how you guys digest it and your thoughts around it. So the theme for today's chat is the necessity for Africans to create independent spaces for us to share our true experiences and realities. So for me, the key words there are independent spaces. So trying to understand what that actually means, and the idea of people sharing their true experiences and realities, and the importance of that as part of the collaboration initiative that we're trying to conduct. So I think as a starting point, I'd like to bring in our first talking point. To begin with, I think, as we all know, there's a lot of stereotypes about Africa and Africans all over the world. If you go to China, people have a interesting view of what Africans are. I just want to break quickly to just welcome Gugu.
Yeah. Hi.
Gugu, thanks for joining our chat. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
We just started with the conversation. I just introduced the theme, but I'd like to give you a few seconds just to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and why you decided to join us today.
Well, my name is Guled Ahmed. I'm from Ethiopia/Somalia, and I live in New York currently. I attend college here, so I'm a college student. And I'm here basically to connect with people from the African diaspora, because my school doesn't really have a lot of African people.
All right. No, we're really happy to have you here, and I hope we will be a sort of like a little family for you on the side, since you feel a little bit isolated where you are. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
So for your benefit, I'm just going to repeat what the theme is for the chat today. So the theme for our chat today is the necessity for Africans to create independent spaces for us to share our true experiences and realities. And I think that probably has a lot of bearing for you, Gugu, because you're clearly finding it difficult to find those independent spaces to share your thoughts as a black person, and with heritage from Africa, we need this collaboration.
Yeah.
So going back to our first talking point, I was just elaborating a little bit on the fact that there's a lot of stereotypes about African people all over the world, and our identity as a people tends to be misrepresented. So the issue is, does that become the justification for us to have independent spaces? So to look at it from a different angle, if we're having independent spaces amongst each other, how is that changing the stereotype? How is that representing us correctly if we're talking amongst each other and not necessarily with other people? So I think that's one of the things we need to discuss. So one of the first questions I'd like to ask, based on your guys' locations, wherever you are, what are the kind of stereotypes that you've come across about African people and Africa? Oninya, I would really like to start with you. What kind of stereotypes have you come across, whether you hear people talking or either on television or on other social media platforms, that you've come across that you find a bit disturbing or maybe even accurate?
Wow, okay. It's hard to think of. There are several. So I guess I'll start chronologically. When I first came to the United States as a child, the stereotypes that I mainly encountered were that Africans were barbaric, we live in the forest and the bush and this and that, not very well educated. And these were stereotypes that I encountered not only amongst non-Africans, not only amongst whites and Latinos and Asians, but also other black people in the United States. And even now, in the work that I do, in a capacity where I work in several African countries, I experience a lot of stereotypes within my workplace of, it's kind of the same thing, that we're just not educated, or on the opposite spectrum, that we are obsessed with acquiring titles, PhD, master's, bachelor's, certificates. I don't know. So I don't know which one I find the most disturbing. I find them all pretty disturbing. And especially in light of the Ebola epidemic that's currently waging through West Africa, I find a lot of those stereotypes are coming back to the surface and are being replayed over and over. So.
All right, Oninya, and how do those stereotypes make you feel?
Angry, mostly. Yeah, angry. I do feel personally hurt when I hear them because, of course, it reflects on me and on my family and friends and my people. And yeah.
Do you feel
All right,
that?
Oninya, thanks for that. Marilyn, is there anything you'd like to add on the issue of stereotypes?
Yeah. I've been living in France for 4 years, and I think in France, the stereotype here in America is mostly about diseases, about uh, dirty water, people living in village. In France, it's quite different. They know African people are not living in trees anymore. Then they think that Africans are made to dance, only to play football or sports. They think that African people in the community are responsible of all the violences that exist. Personally, it doesn't affect me. I think it's challenging because it's a sort of empowering us. It calls us to change it. We have to change it. I wish I could be hungry too, but I don't want to be hungry because if I'm hungry, I've been following few pages on Facebook about Africans, and what I found is that most of them they don't know what they want. They want to be respected. They want to stop the racism, but they are first racist. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be racist. I want to share my community in a good way and accept them too. I want them to accept me, not because I beg them, I don't have to beg them, but I want to show them that I can be like them. There's nothing different. The fact is that in class, for example, most of us are students. We are not always the last, the last in class. So I can think like them or even better. That's why I have to prove them. I don't have to stay on my corner or insult them or treat them like they are strangers too. I have to stop it. That's my challenge actually. So that's why I have to hide.
All right. Thanks for that, Marilyn. Vincent, have you ever found yourself having to correct people about Africa and what Africa is all
Uh,
about?
yeah, I would say mainly from my own perspective. I was raised in Cameroon. I mean, coming to the United States just 2 years ago, it's it's different, especially when you come to a place which is predominantly white people. In Iowa, where I live and where I've lived for these 3 years, it's funny the way they see Africa. I mean, first of all, the name or the appellation Africa is something which is kind of it's I'm picky about it. I don't I know we are here and we are talking about all our countries as a fold and Africa as a whole, but they always have this very it's straight. Like they just know that Africa, the thing about the trees, the thing about the fact that everybody has a pet lion, maybe everybody has a tiger, some people have zebras and stuff like that. But it's also the fact that the thing that I can't speak. I Most of them always go like, how can you speak English? And I'm like, yeah. I started speaking when I was, a child. I was born into English. I mean, I was born into English and Cameroon and French in Cameroon. But I started speaking English when I was like maybe born, or I heard English in the TV while I was in the stomach, my mother's stomach. But what I'm saying is, it's different the way they look. They have these preconceived ideas, and I don't know if the thing is their media just keeps them in that particular loop. It doesn't let them go out of that particular cocoon. They are like, we just know that Africans, have these things and they can't speak. And if anybody is here, that person should have gone through ESL. And if you say you're from a particular country in Africa, you then have to start explaining Cameroon according to Nigeria. You maybe have to explain a place like Lesotho, that is in South Africa. You have to explain everything you have to say about where you come from. You have to explain to somebody. So it's ideas which I think platforms like Ezibota would get to, break through and make people understand that Africa is not one country, it's not one people. And the fact that I'm from Cameroon or maybe Nigeria, I don't speak the same language as somebody like like Vivian, who is from Kenya. It's different. So that's what I've faced. I mean, well, that's what I've seen in Iowa and in the United States.
All right, thanks, man. Google, I'd like to ask you something. From your point of view, who do you think should be speaking out for Africa?
Well, that's actually a very loaded question. I don't know. Like, in my opinion, I think Africans should be at the forefront of, like, all of these issues. Like, I feel like we should be the ones to tell our stories, and that, like, other people shouldn't tell our stories for us, because I feel like a lot of the time that's what happens. So I'd say Africans should be, like, the people who should be narrating our stories. Yeah.
All right. I think, Chinwe, for you, the answer to that question is probably obvious. It should be Ezibota speaking for Africans. But what other channels do you think are open for Africans to sort of represent themselves properly around the world?
So I think that before you can talk about the channels, any specific channels, you have to talk about kind of why and what. And I think that everyone's kind of made a good point about the stereotypes and what's going on out there. But I also think another piece of it that I just wanted to say really quickly is that when you meet someone for the first time, like someone you've never known, you would never tell them to explain that you would never tell them to turn around and introduce you to someone else, right? Like, I wouldn't meet someone on the street and say, hello, I just met you. Can you now tell someone else who I am? And I think that the current dialogue about the African countries and the countries that are on the continent is very much like that. You have a bunch of people who came to the continent and kind of stayed around for a little bit and observed from the outside, and then they went out and they told this story about who Africans are. And I think that, unfortunately, because of the way that they did it, they derailed the narrative for such a long time for us not to even realize what was going on. Basically, we had a bunch of strangers telling the rest of the world who we were. And so I think what Gugu said is really important, that the only person who knows who you are, even on an individual level, is you and maybe your family and friends. So then it makes sense that we would be the ones to tell the world who we are. And I think that that's why it's not so important which channels. I think every channel, whether it's media, whether it's print, whether it's radio, whether it's internet, whether it's YouTube, whatever it is, because on a very individual level, our stories are as simple and as complex as we are individually. Like, for instance, Vincent grew up in Cameroon, but he has a Nigerian name. Nobody would really understand the complexity of that unless you knew Vincent or you knew his story. But if I were to meet him outside, I would assume that he's Nigerian. But that's me as a Nigerian. I don't know the complexities of Vincent's identity. And so on that very same level, that's why it's so important that however it is people feel comfortable sharing their story, whether it's via Ezibota, whether it's jumping on YouTube and sharing a funny story about what happened with them and their mom, or writing a short little blurb on their blog, or championing a cause, I think it's very important for people to take any and every avenue to share what it means to be individually African, because that's the only way you can see the real vibrance and the real richness of what it means to be from the continent. You can't just kind of go off of this very basic story that everyone's been given, that's been told in like one chapter in every history book in the world. That's a very, basic story. So I think my answer to that would be every possible avenue that a person from the continent can find to reach out and express who they are, they should take it. Because it's only when the world is bombarded by the very variety of African individuals that they'll realize that these stories that they've heard, they've read, they've seen are just flat out false.
Excellent point. Beulah, I'd like to bring you into this discussion. I once heard someone say the sweetest words in the world is your own name to hear, and it seems like we tend to want to tell the story, but from the people looking at it from the outside, um, they see more than what they hear. Is our narrative only based on what we say, or can we actually show the world what we are instead of tell them? And are there any other ways we can do that?
Good question. I wasn't expecting that, but hopefully I can answer the challenge. Um, I do agree. I think oftentimes what kind of frustrates me about diasporans or just a lot of the dialogue in general is that we often say we're diverse, we're diverse, we're diverse, and like we're so set on convincing people that we're diverse that we forget to show it, like you said. So, for instance, we'll say at the crowd, and it's like 87% Nigerian, 2% Ghanaian, and the rest maybe Ethiopian or two. You know, and so it's kind of like you're saying you're diverse, but you know, you guys all crack the same jokes, you all eat the same food, you all wear the same clothes. But then again, I don't know how to respond to that because it shouldn't be about proving ourselves, right, to other people, but more so like maybe proving ourselves to each other. So, you know, if I'm someone who's really campaigning the fact that we're a diverse people, then I need to take initiative and, you know, either take the time to learn about a Cameroon or about a Africa and apply it to the narrative of the African narrative instead of like acting as if Nigeria is the only story that matters because that's my reality. I need to be able to acknowledge other people's reality. So if we're not able to do that, and we're just kind of content in saying we're diverse, then we're never going to accomplish what we hope to accomplish, and we're never going to be seen how we hope to be seen, not only from other people or outsiders, but amongst ourselves. I don't know if I answered that question, but yes.
No, that was good. Thanks, Beulah.
Yeah.
Vivian, I'd like to, I think perhaps this is probably more pertinent to you than anyone. You are involved in, you know, putting out a message on your platform, on Tumblr and so on. What do you think is the role of independent spaces such as yours? And more specifically, why do those spaces have to be independent? What exactly do we mean by that?
Well, the role, okay, I'll just give a little background story. Same story almost. You come into the United States as an African, you know your own story. However, when you go to school or you watch TV, the story that you have is not the same story that your Black American friends or your white American friends are getting. They're getting a whole different story. So when I started Our Africa was towards the end of high school, after I've endured years of different stories about Africa, the whole lion story. I wanted to give. I wanted to deliver a message the best way that people my age would receive it, and that's the role of independent platforms. We're given an opportunity through Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook to give a message in the most simplistic way that we can give it, and the most easiest way people will understand it. You could tell your friends to go to the library and grab a book, but to be honest, it'll be 1 in 10 friends who will go to the library and grab a book. But everyone is on Facebook, everyone is on Twitter, and everyone is on Tumblr, and they're kind of forced as friends to see what you have to deliver. And I guess that's the role for independent platforms. We're given an opportunity to deliver a message, and that's, to me right now, that's the best way that we, as young Africans, can change the stereotype. Use what we have, utilize what we have to make that message better.
Okay, Vivian, just to follow up on that, in your view, what do we mean by independent? So what would be a dependent space?
Oh, well, independent space. The way that I'm understanding it, from my blogging experience, a dependent space would be let's say a blog that particularly talks about Black culture, not just Black American culture, but Caribbean Black, African Black, and so forth. But an independent space will be a space that specifically concentrates on one message. If that makes any sense. I'm not sure how I can explain that, but we focus independent space focus on one message.
All right, I think I understand what you mean. So a focus on something specific as opposed to just being blown around by the wind into whatever seems interesting in the time. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, that's perfect.
All right, cool. All right, guys, I'd like to move on to our second talking point of the day, and that's really more focused on the independent spaces that are available. So maybe if I can start with you, Vincent. Based on where you are and the resources available to you, um, what kind of platforms do you think are most applicable for African people, whether they're on the continent or in the diaspora, and the kind of access or the ease of access to those platforms, or maybe let me say the platforms that are available to you specifically? Which platforms make more sense for you, Vincent?
Somebody like Zina, who has been in Iowa for a longer time than I have been, would understand that people who are in Iowa, I'm just talking about mostly the Midwest, um, international students activities. I'm talking about the student life here, and those African dance, African cultural nights, and where we could actually kind of attract more people. But when you out of college, uh, uh,
All right, guys, I'm not sure if you can hear Vincent, but I can't on my side. Can I just take that question and transfer it to Oninye? So, Oninye, same question. What do you think is the most appropriate platforms for people in Africa, and maybe more specifically to yourself? Which platform makes more sense for you for collaboration?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, I think those are two different answers. In terms of what platform or platforms are most applicable to myself, I'd say a platform like this that we're all engaged in right now is a perfect example. Various social media, and that's just because of the fact that I have ready access to a computer and the internet and so forth. And also because of the fact that there are so many of us in diaspora, it's not quite as easy for us to meet in person as it is for us to have online chats such as this one. So I think for me, internet platforms and just different social media platforms are the best. But I think there's such a huge, there's an array of accessibility for people on the continent. And as much as I would love for everybody in Africa to have access to the things that we all currently have access to, it's not possible. So I think there needs to be a variety, just of people to be able to meet in their homes or in nearby eateries to be able to have these kinds of discussions. And I guess people who have more access to resources, platforms such as this one also are appropriate. It helps connect us all over the world, and yeah, I think I'm rambling now, so I'll stop.
Tavi, can I ask a follow-up question that I just thought of right now?
Go ahead.
So Onyinye, you mentioned like the different ways or different places that people can meet, but one thing I've always wondered is what kinds of things would we want to meet about? Because I think sometimes, like, you have these community chats, for instance, or you have a meetup, but then you ask yourself, well, we're not all the same,
Right.
and we don't all have the same culture. So then, what is it that we are all going to meet up and talk about? So I don't know if you want to take that or anyone else wants to take that, but for me, out of curiosity, I always love to have young Africans, whether they're on the continent or abroad, get together. But then, what are you going to talk about?
I, I think I'll let someone else answer the question so I don't take up too much space. But
I mean, I can answer it briefly. Chuma, I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of times, like, a pet peeve of mine is people that enjoy talking, but they don't actually take action. And talking is definitely a form of action because you need to have conversations to raise awareness. But a lot of people are content in just talking, or like the conversations are a little bit aimless. So, like a lot of us have alluded to, like we have various aspects of interest. Marilyn, for example, is interested in, I think she said, sharing the experiences of African men, something like that. Sorry if I butchered, but my memory is very poor. But like, if you find other young Africans that are interested in that aspect, you can kind of have conversations, find out where the issues are, and then find out how we can address it. If you want to address it, like to have more, for me, my preference is to have more solution-oriented discussions instead of just being like, man, this sucks. Yeah, man, this really sucks. Yeah, man, this is horrible. Like, find out what we can do to make it suck a little bit less. That's a preference for me. So when you talk about what we talk about the issues, yes, but also as a follow-up, talk about how we can solve these issues. So I don't know.
No, let me just add a point to Beula's point. I completely agree with what you're saying. And also, before we get people to just meet up, let's not just have a group of 50 different Africans with 50 different ideas and what they want to say. Why don't we, before you ask people to meet, have a particular interest? Like Marilyn says she's interested in women. Okay, we have a group of people who are interested in African women. Okay, what are the issues that lie on the continent that deal with women? How can we fix these issues? How do the problems begin? So we have common interest groups meeting together, and not just different people meeting together trying to figure out what to talk about. Let's have something to talk about before we meet up.
And just as a follow-up to that, and I don't mean to like hog the conversation, this is the last time I will talk ever in life, but also with what Vivian said, when we meet, it doesn't always have to be so like heavy or like addressing disease or poverty. Like we can meet and talk about our favorite comedian. I think the issue that we have is we're always trying to like save somebody or like fix something. We can meet just to talk. I think that's why I was kind of also talking about interests. Like if I like a soccer team, which I don't, but if you like the soccer team, I could talk to other people about other soccer teams, get their opinions, understand how their countries feel about their teams, and that's that. We don't always have to be like, let's have this serious discussion about corruption, but I would rather not, ever.
Gugu, is there anything you'd like to add to this conversation?
You're on mute, Gugu.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with what was last said about talking about all the positive aspects of Africa, because I feel like I have so much to learn about different cultures that I would love for our meetings to take take part in such a climate.
All right. So maybe just to continue along that thought process, can I throw this back at Vivian? What's your take on collaboration between platforms? So you find that there's a platform like Ezibota. You are also working on your own separate platform. What is the opportunities for collaboration, and what do you think that can achieve?
I love collaborations. I love bringing people together. More often than ever. I always see that we have different platforms, but it's everyone literally has the same aim. We have just two different branches aiming for the same thing. And as I said before, when people collaborate together, we get things done faster and we get the message out there faster. There's so many blogs, especially on Tumblr. Our mission is to just show a positive image of Africa. So we have followers kind of, on different sides, even though they're, going for the same thing. But when you collaborate, you bring people together, and it's not so much separation. You just create an opportunity for us to, as I said, to get something done faster without going to different sides.
All right, thanks. I believe we've just been joined by Maz. Hi, Maz. Welcome to the community chat. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Discussing around independent spaces for Africans to express, their realities and experiences, and we're just trying to understand more about what kind of platforms are available for them to do so across the world, and what kind of communication we should be having amongst each other across platforms. So, for example, you might find that in developed nations like the US or in Europe, a smartphone is something that's very common. But you come down to the continent, a lot of people have phones, but they're not necessarily smartphones, and they can communicate via text or voice, but they can't necessarily throw you a message on WhatsApp or something like that. I just wanna throw you into this discussion quickly. What do you think can be done to bridge that gap between obviously the developed world with more access to resources and platforms for communication versus people in Africa, for example, who are less fortunate?
Okay. Hey guys. First of all, second of all, sorry for being late. I was doing some work. Had to watch a soccer match and whatever. Anyway, thanks for having me.
Sorry, Maz. Can I just interrupt you for a second? Maybe before you answer, just introduce yourself quickly, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
What do I? Sorry, I did not get that part.
All right.
What do I do?
was just saying if you could just quickly introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. Okay. I'm Maz. I'm from Sudan, North Sudan, politically speaking. And I am from Toronto, Canada. I've been here for 14 years, and I used to do a whole lot of nonprofit for social, in social organization and things like that. And I own African.com, IFREECAN.com. Yeah, like I basically just like to infuse art with socially motivated messages, and basically bring it out to the community here, which would be, I would say, mainly East African, but it's obviously open, but it's obviously also joined by the major Afro diaspora community in here, and yeah, so that's what I do. Been doing for 4 years now. Yeah, it's good. And for work, I do like a whole bunch of stuff, but yeah, I can actually just talk to you guys and answer the question. I just think that because you see, like, there are just so many initiatives, there's so many folks who are trying to do good work or whatever. But the thing is that there's actually a whole lot of overlap, because you see, we're all trying to do the same thing, but then again, we do not really do our thorough research properly, and then we end up duplicating what other people have been doing for a while, or maybe we actually been doing the same thing. It's just that maybe they actually been doing it better, or vice versa. So basically, I just think that to actually close the gap, we should actually just do our thorough research, find out what is actually happening before we actually start our own initiative. I mean, I mean, I'm not too sure how you can actually pronounce it. Ezibota, is that how you say it?
Ezibota.
Ezibota. It's actually really good. A really good initiative. Kudos to you guys. And to be honest with you, I just think that something like something like Ezibota would actually be really good if we actually have maybe chapters and basically or if we can actually collaborate with other organizations or initiatives everywhere in the motherland and also outside the motherland. They can actually do the same thing. I think that's actually the first step to do it.
All right, thanks, Maz. I'm not sure if we've lost him. Marilyn, based on all the all right, Maz. Thanks for your response. I just wanna ask Marilyn to jump into this conversation based on everything she's been hearing so far with regards to platforms, communication. What's her view based on her vantage point in Cameroon?
Can you repeat the question, please?
All right. So we've been having quite a long discussion about these kind of platforms, how platforms should collaborate, and the fact that there's a bit of a gap between where people are. I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about what you think from a Cameroonian point of view can be done to reach out more to people. So, for example, in Cameroon, how do people communicate? How are they connected?
I think it first of all it depends on where they are in Cameroon, because people living in cities like metropolis, they have smartphones, they're connected on WhatsApp, they are really connected anymore. But most of the population, villages, they just have phones. I think almost all Cameroonians have a way to communicate. They have a phone, even if it's not a smartphone. Most of them, people living in villages, they don't need a smartphone. They just need a phone to communicate. And I think now the Cameroonian population, the youth, the Cameroonian youth, we are motivated. We have a need to express ourselves. We want to share our culture. And what is going on out there actually is that people are improving the hip hop music, the urban music style in Cameroon. And I think it's good because we found that Nigerian, what they did few years ago is that they start with movies, and we liked those movies because it was crazy. They have something important here, and that which concerns everyone, magic. It was interesting to see how people can behave with witches and all those stuff. And now the Nigerian movies industry is on top, and we are trying now to do the same thing. Maybe we will not reach the same level, maybe we will, but we are looking for a way to communicate. So what people are actually doing is that most of us from the diaspora, we are blogging. We are blogging a lot. There are some pages on Facebook about the African in general. We are not focused on Cameroon, but we are interested about sharing African culture globally. For example, we have Fascist Black. I don't know if you know Fascist Black. It's about the same thing. They are sharing the fashion, the African fashion from United States America. My fiance, he has a website called dialect.com where he shares Afro-Caribbean cuisine. And this is how we try. I'm sharing African women behaviors, abilities, strength. And that's the way we try to communicate at our level. But I think it's not enough, because what most of us are doing is that we are all motivated, but we are not trying. And when we are trying, we are not united, because when my fiance started, he launched his company, he couldn't find enough African, whether Cameroonian, to help him to improve his skills, to help him to prove him that what he's doing is meaningful. He's working with the Nigerian. Most of our clients now are Nigerian. And I think it's a pity because Cameroonians are everywhere. Cameroonians are in France, in London, in United States, where we can find the company. But Cameroonians, they are not they are interested about the person behind the company, not what the company is doing. And this is how we behave, and I think it's a pity. We have to find our way. Most of us, when somebody tries to do something good, others envy him. They start gossiping on him, and this is very bad. I think we don't have to do it. We have to find our way to try to do what we can do. Everybody cannot be a lawyer, everybody cannot be a doctor, but everybody can do something. And we have to find our own way to do that. We don't have to listen to European media or African media controlled by European. We have to find our own way. What I like on my project with African women is that African women nourish the family. They provide the food, the house. And in 1980s, our country had a very good growth thanks to agriculture. Why not doing it now? Why not giving to those women the power to improve what they know to do? That's what we have to do. And this is the way I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. And I think today you've made me realize that you know what, we need to have great respect for moms, because I can see you trying to juggle your little girl there and still try to make a point. So kudos to you for that. Beulah, Marilyn said something very interesting there. She's saying the platforms are building up, they are there, but the unity is not there. And it seems like a little bit of what Maz said. Everyone is doing their own thing. We talk a good deal about collaboration, but it doesn't seem to be happening. What do you think? How can platforms unite? Or how can we unite these initiatives so that we can do something bigger?
I think you said Beulah, right? Okay, I'm just making sure. I think kind of what Maz said, we have to do our research. Like, I don't want to generalize, and I don't want to even generalize for the country of Nigeria. I would say a lot of Nigerians that I know like to shoot from the hip. They don't do research. They don't see who, the ones I know, just me, but they don't see who around them is doing something similar to them. And so they attempt something, and when it doesn't succeed the next day, they go to something else, right? Or they continue doing it or whatever, but we don't understand that we're kind of dividing the populations that we can affect, or we're dividing our audiences because so many of us are doing the same thing. So I think that's kind of like the issue that we might have on the web as well, and with Twitters, with Tumblrs, with whatever. Like, we all have this passion, we all have this idea, and we all want to be the ones to do it. But we don't really take the time to research and see who else is doing something similar to us, and see how we can kind of like differentiate ourselves or offer something new to this same community that everyone is trying to cater to and everyone's trying to help out or whatever. And so a way that we can kind of address this is similar to what Ezibota did with Vivian of Our Africa. Like, you know, we noticed that she has a following and she has strengths that she can contribute to this chat. So why don't we collectively, you know, come up with this community chat or present this community chat, and we can serve both of our populations as opposed to the overlap that Maz was referring to. And also a lot of times, to me, it takes critical thinking and kind of like assessing what someone does well, what they don't do well, what you and your initiative do well, and what it doesn't do well, and then complementing each other. And I just don't think a lot of us take the time to do that. Maybe because it takes time, maybe because it takes research, maybe it takes so much effort for us, I don't know. But I think that's definitely something we can work on, because there's just 1,000,001 initiatives trying to do the same thing, when if we were to all work together, it would be an easier effort and would be more effective.
Can I add something to what Beulah just said, Papi?
Go ahead.
I think another thing is, and we touched upon this very early, and I think Vincent was the one to say this. If someone else said it, I'm sorry, I'm misquoting you. But we talk about Africa, especially those of us in the diaspora, as if it's one entity, when we know ourselves it's not. Because when we're in our countries, when we are in our ethnic groups, we're not talking about Africa. We are talking about Nigeria. We're talking about the Igbo community. We're talking about Ngopala. We are probably one of the few continents, and I mean, I could be wrong, but our identities in terms of who we are and who we identify with are on a smaller scale than the full continent. So when you start talking about, initiatives for Africa, you cannot have an initiative for Africa when the entire executive board is made up of one ethnic group, because other groups are not going to feel included. They're not going to feel welcome. And I don't know if that's indicative of, the way that our countries evolved or the way our ethnic groups evolved, but fundamentally, if someone like me is not there or somehow associated with it, I'm not going to feel terribly inclined to join. I remember I was introducing my cousins who grew up in Nigeria to Ezibota. The first thing one of my cousins asked me was, "Is this an Igbo organization?" And I said, "No, it's not." I said, "It's an African organization." And you know what he said? "Isn't Igbo African?" Totally skirted the issue, right? Because fundamentally, you can't create a cause or an initiative that says, yes, we are for Africans, but you're not actively seeking out other Africans and opening the space for other Africans. And I think that that's what, and I'm not just tooting our horn here, but I think this is why and what we do with Ezibota is a little different. We are like searching you all out. We are looking for other Africans intentionally, because we know we can't sit there and say, oh yes, we want everyone to be able to tell their stories, but actually 50% of all the stories are Nigerian, and actually 50% of those stories are Igbo Nigerian stories, because it's not authentic, it's not genuine, it's not true. And we're all intelligent human beings. We can tell. You say you're for us, but you don't have anyone representing us. And I think that that's where you go from a well-executed initiative to something that someone shoots from the hip. You have a great idea, and I think a lot of Africans are entrepreneurial in that way. We like to create. We like to, bring about new things. But if you're going to do something as expansive as including the continent, then you have to be authentic in representing the continent. Because, there's an organization called Sahara Reporters, and all they focus on is Nigerian news. And they do it very well. They do it very well. If I ever want to know what's going on in Nigeria, I will go to Sahara Reporters. And in fact, one of their YouTube anchors, she touches on other countries, but she's not about to be like, I cover all the countries on the continent, I will tell you everything that's going on. She doesn't say that. And I think that that's where transparent, authentic messaging comes in. And I think that that's part of the reason why some of our initiatives aren't doing well. Because if you know you do one thing well, then do that one thing well. And then, since you're doing that one thing well, you can easily collaborate with someone else who's doing that one thing well, instead of overshooting and saying, I do 50 million things, but actually I just do this one. And I'm just going to pretend like you don't know what's going on. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Can I really quickly?
Sure.
Yeah, it's actually targeted at Gugu, and I'm going to say Gugu because I don't know how to say your real name and I don't want to butcher it. But I think while either Chinwe or myself was saying something. Oh, sorry. I think while either Chinwe or myself was saying something, saw you smiling or laughing, and I know that you said you're from Ethiopia and Somalia, and yeah. I mean, for me, I get tired of seeing Nigerians all the time. I'm so sick of it. So I just kind of want to know how you feel about what Chinwe just shared, because I think it's an important point to hit. Just from your perspective, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Like that's so true. Like I feel like, especially for me, like when people ask me where I'm from, I always have, like I'm always so scared to say where I'm from because I'm ethnically Somali and I lived my whole life in Ethiopia. So like it's always been like a tension between which country I should identify with. I feel like on the African continent, I feel like the Ethiopian voice is heard a lot more than the Somali voice, which I feel like is way more underrepresented. So I'll try and speak from that perspective. But I feel as though, yeah, like ethnically speaking, like since I am Somali, like we're the only country in Africa that isn't like based on ethnicity. It's more like clan. It's a clan system. So like the whole country is like ethnically the same. And I don't know how like especially the Somali voice would be brought into the whole African like discourses. But yeah, no, I feel like a lot of like I feel like especially like from where I come from, like it's very difficult. Like I feel like people don't want to mobilize into these initiatives. Like you see a lot less of my people like in them, and I don't know how to like bring them to embrace their Africanness. So yeah, that's why I'm here, and I want to like learn a lot more from you guys.
Cool. Oh, really quick question, and this is sorry, Poppy. I swear this is probably my last question. I won't do this again. But in terms of North African countries, I don't know if this is indicative of other regions, but it seems like outside of the continent, and maybe inside the continent too, they're not considered as African. They're considered as something else. And how much of that do you think plays into the utilization of these independent spaces? The idea that you put something up as African, you say it's for all African. Do these other regions consider themselves African in the same way that West Africa considers itself African, South Africa, or Central Africa? Are we all thinking of African in the same way, or are people kind of opting out? And I'd love to hear everyone's, also Vivian too, because you're from Kenya. So I'm just curious, because I think that when I think of African, I think of everyone, but maybe that's not the case.
Can I speak? Yeah. Okay, so very strange because I feel like the country that I come from occupies a very like strange place in Africa. Like we are on the continent, but we have a lot of like influences from like I guess the Middle East. So I feel like especially growing up in Ethiopia, like a lot of the people that I was surrounded with wouldn't identify with as a collective African. They would always be like, we're Abasha, we're different. But I feel like especially in my household, like my parents were extremely like pan-African. So like from a young age I was always like taught that like you're African, that everyone else in this country like is African. So like I guess I do have that collective mentality, which was very different than the people that I was always surrounded with. But yeah, no, Ethiopia like is very strange in that aspect, and I feel like African for like Ethiopia would be very different from what African would mean to you. Yeah.
To answer that question, okay, I feel the one issue that I have, one problem that I have is that when we say African, most people think of sub-Saharan Africa. They think of the cultures within sub-Saharan Africa. They don't necessarily always think the Arab cultures that are in Northern Africa. When I say Africa, I'm talking, if you're geographically located in the whole continent, you're African. That's how I see it, regardless of your ethnicity. Because when I look at Kenya, there's a lot of there's some towards the coast. There's a lot of Middle Eastern influence, but I wouldn't look at them as Middle Eastern. They're geographically located in Africa. You're African. That's how I look at it. And to me, I think that's the issue. we don't look at the borders. We more so look at the cultures. But imagine if, okay, a lot of people say Egypt because it's so, so influenced by the Middle East that they're Middle Eastern. But if Egypt was located in Central Africa, would we still say that Egypt is, the Middle East? We wouldn't. So I think we should look at it geographically, that if you're located on the continent, regardless of the subculture within your country, you're African, because at the end of the day, that's what makes Africa Africa. We're a diverse continent. We don't have this one picture to us. So it's a problem that people look at Africa with the mentality that the cultures within sub-Saharan Africa are what makes Africa Africa.
That's excellent. Oninye, is there anything that you would like to add? What's on your mind?
I kind of forgot the question in listening to everybody, but yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what's been said, that Africa is not just, even within one nation. Let's take Ghana, for example. It's not like everybody who's Ghanaian is exactly the same kind. There's the Ga, the Akan, the Ewe, a multiplicity, and also a lot of those groups cohabitate and coexist together. So it's not quite as simple as one ethnicity versus another. And so I think I have a pretty Pan-African perspective of it, is that we have black skin that connects us as Africans. We have shared experiences of both oppression and rising up from that oppression. And that's not even just limited to the African continent. You can see that in the struggles and lives of black people in Ecuador or Brazil or Canada, and those are the kinds of things that unite us. And so I think when we talk about making a space for African people, we need to be inclusive of African people everywhere.
I like that.
Yeah, I actually think that it's a very nice way of looking at it. I'm not sure if there's anyone else who has something to say, because we've pretty much gone through most of our talking points, and I think you guys have covered most of what we wanted to talk about. The points have been quite interesting. I'd like to maybe start asking guys to share some of their concluding thoughts about what we've been talking about today. And please feel free to discuss anything that you didn't get a chance to express. This is your opportunity to just express your thoughts more clearly. And what are your final thoughts around the issue of independent spaces and Africans across the world expressing their experiences and their realities? I'd like to start off with Vincent, who's been out of the picture for a little while, but I'm sure he remembers most of what we were talking about before. Vincent, just from your own personal view, I mean, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm very sorry. I had an internet issue. I'm not in my house, as I said. I'm helping a friend move, so I'm in his house. What I was saying before I left, and I actually was watching the video when the internet thing was going on. The video could still go on the laptop, but I don't know. It's most of the time when you come on this, I mean, this is my second time, but I feel like when you're on this Ezibota chat thing, it's like you want to tell your story. You want to give everybody coffee or tea or chocolate or something, and have them have popcorn and just give them a movie about yourself. It's always difficult to actually do this concluding thing, but I'll try to keep it simple. As I said from the starting, I was raised in Cameroon. I have this thing. I mean, I always tell my friends that whenever I find myself in a situation, I always go for the nationality that works best. So if somebody hints me like somebody doesn't like Nigerians, I switch really fast. I'm like, oh, I'm Cameroonian. And if somebody doesn't like Cameroonian, I'm like, oh, I'm Nigerian. I can play with that. But what I realized about the African identity, having been able to have two, I can say, Um, I would like to say it's something which I think people like Vivian, whom I'm meeting here for the first time, and what they have in place and doing, to promote that, to promote the African identity, and what these wonderful three ladies, Dina, Wela, and Chino, are doing with Ezibota, as well as Papi and every other person in this network is doing with Ezibota, is telling the story from different lights. And that's what I want everybody to take from this today. I think as an African, if you ask me what I do best, I'll tell you I dance. And this is not tooting my horns. And just FYI, Dina dances well too. She knows how to dance Congolese music really well, and she's really good at that. But whenever I find myself in any place, and I think I've actually caught myself dancing African dance when an American music is playing, and I'm like, yeah, this beat goes with what I'm doing right now. But that is just me doing my identity thing, showing other people what we are apart from lions and tigers and trees and hearts. You know, I equally write. I write a lot of my childhood experiences and my experience in Cameroon, my experience in Nigeria. But generally, we should not limit our portrayal of Africa as it is. Let me generalize it right now. In my portrayal of Cameroon and Nigeria, I always make sure that I show them that, in Cameroon we play soccer well. In Nigeria we do movies well, kind of. You know what I mean? I mean, Nigerian movies are not, they're wonderful, but they are good. They are good. And I'll tell you, in Cameroon, they have wonderful food. In Cameroon, they have one of the most, best place to find, very weird kind of leaves and flowers. And they have really weird things, which I don't think is in any place in the world. And but you have to be very, very subjective when you want to portray Africa. You have to be subjective to your tribe. You have to be subjective to your country. You have to be subjective to your ways, the ways your parents brought you up. And if you do that, you would make people to know specifics about what you are, about where you're from, about what your culture is, about what your people are about. But if you always go like, oh, where are you from? I'm from Africa. Then they'll start thinking that myself and Google speak the same language, and I'm sure Google doesn't speak Igbo. And if Google speaks Igbo, it'll be weird. But you know what I'm talking about. It's as simple as just make sure that when you are talking about your own Africa, as small as it is, if it's Nigeria, if it's Igbo, if it's Ethiopia, if it's Somalia, make sure you are telling them what it means and make sure you're using the best way you can actually do it. I'm not saying that other people can learn how to dance, other people can learn how to write, but we have all of these things available to us, and you guys are doing wonderful. I think I said a lot of things.
Thanks, Vincent. Beulah, do you have any concluding thoughts?
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Awkward. Okay. Concluding thoughts about independent spaces. I think I was excited to have this conversation because it's one to me that it creates a lot of energy and like excitement. And we're here. We're all fairly young. I know Black doesn't crack, but I don't think anybody's over the age of 50, right? We're all like maybe 20s, 30s, right? Okay. I'm correct in assuming so. All right. So we all have this education, this knowledge, this wisdom, and we have these resources. It doesn't matter, if we're in France, like Maryland, or if we're in the United States of America, we have these tools that are accessible to us. And when we have conversations like this, it makes me excited because I'm like, there are other people out there that have similar experiences to mine, that think like I think, that want to achieve similar things. We might have different paths, but ultimately I feel like a lot of us want to achieve similar things, kind of like what Maz was saying. And Gugu, when you told me that, I forgot where you currently are, but when you told me that you're here because there's not a lot of Africans around you and like you want to be able to congregate with people like you, I don't know if you noticed, but I had like a really creepy smile on my face because that's exactly what this is for. Like, I'm so happy you're here. You don't understand. let me stop before I creep you out some more. But like, you don't understand. This platform is for you. Like, it's for you. Like, and I think that just us all talking and getting to knowing each other, and I'm sure we're going to connect after this conversation, and then possibly meeting, you know, some of us being in next month's chat and some of us meeting in next. It's going to create a community, even though virtually, one that is going to be built on a lot of different strengths. And oftentimes, I don't know who said this, but someone said we don't really. Someone said something like we only refer to ourselves as Africans in defense of Africa, but every other time we're really focused on divisive aspects of us. So like I might crack a joke about a Ghanaian, like I'm Nigerian, you know, but if white people say, you know, why do all Africans wear grass skirts? I say, no, not all Africans, I'm African. So like if we can kind of connect with one another and unite, but respect our differences as well and see them as things that kind of like unify us and things that make us different and things that intrigue us, as opposed to be like, oh, that's the reason I don't talk to you, or, you know, you don't really get me. I think it'll be a great thing. So that's why I'm just really excited about conversations like these. I'm going to stop rambling, but I'm excited about collaborations, future collaborations with Our Africa, future collaborations with any individual that has an idea for us, since, you know, we have this platform and we're always open to ideas. I'm just very, very excited. And yeah, I'm done. Sorry for all that rambling. Go ahead.
No, thanks for that, Beulah. Chinwe, any thoughts from your side?
I think that, so the first thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to go back to, is the importance of telling your own story. And I think that maybe in this modern generation where short attention spans are like a dime a dozen, and reading and literacy is not what's accepted or what's exciting. It's all about fast entertainment and, you know, everything's quick. But I think that stories have gotten a bad rap. The idea of a story is very lame, and it's like, oh, whatever, it's fiction. But I think that on a very fundamental level, when you tell somebody about your day, it's a story. You know, I stubbed my toe this morning, I was stuck in traffic, you know, my boss yelled at me, and I came home and I went to sleep. That's a story. It may not be that terribly exciting. You may not publish it. You may not win a Pulitzer, but it's a story. And I think fundamentally what people from the African continent need to realize is that we have many cultures built on the power of stories. And for us to turn our back on that heritage and not use that as a way to talk about ourselves, to talk about our identity, is doing ourselves a disservice. So just like Vincent said, when people ask you who you are, where you come from, you tell them, I'm from this country. They'll ask you, where is that? Because they probably don't know what you're talking about or what continent it's in, because it's not in North America or Europe. So you tell them. There is an element of frustration when you have to educate people, but you have to think about what's the alternative, having other people educate them on your behalf. And we know for the past 200 plus years that hasn't worked too well for us. So if this is the era where young Africans use these different spaces to talk about who they are, and that indirectly means that the rest of the world learns what it means to be African, then I think that we should take those opportunities. I'm tired of having other people tell my story for me. I'm tired of walking into a room and people assuming things about me that they don't know. I'm tired of people opting me out of narratives that I haven't opted myself out of. And I think that the only way that I can reclaim that space and own my potential is by telling people, this is who I am, this is what I'm capable of, and you cannot tell me what I can and cannot do. And I think overall, as an African narrative, as a continent, that's something that we've been told a number of times. And I think that's something that members of the extended diaspora, Caribbean, African Americans, African Europeans have been told over and over and over again what they can and cannot do. So I think that it's important that we own our stories and we own that heritage that uses stories to kind of share our identity. And I think the second thing I'm going to say is these platforms are only as effective as the people using them, right? Just like any other tool, that tool is only as effective as the people using them. And I think we've all kind of talked about the idea where, people talk and they talk about the crusade, but then they don't march. People talk, they talk about the war, but they don't fight. And I think that at this point, where we're surrounded by talent. Everywhere you turn, there's another young African who is doing something incredible. But for whatever reason, we're not lifting each other up. And I think that as we're telling our individual stories, we also need to remember that we can all succeed if we lift each other up. We do not have to buy into the story, this narrative that only one can succeed, only one person can be the best, only one person can, win all the glory. That's a very, to me, it's a very Western narrative. I don't know if it's necessarily Western, but that's what I've learned while I've lived in the U.S. And I think that that's a narrative we need to reject because, again, our heritage is very collective. We succeed collectively. We uplift each other collectively. We win collectively. So why at this crucial juncture turn our backs once again on a heritage that worked for us pre this outside world introduction? So I think fundamentally what I'm going to say is there's good and bad in every culture, whether Western, Eastern, African. It is up to us to decide in this new technology age what pieces of these cultures we want to adopt with our eyes open, and how much of our heritage are we going to own and move forward with positively with our eyes open. Because we can sit around all day and complain about what's wrong with this, what's wrong with that, what's wrong with this, what's wrong with that. At the end of the day, we're still staying in the same place. So if we're going to move forward, let's think about the things that we want to intentionally incorporate into this new era and begin to use the tools, the skills that we have, and uplift each other so that we can actually see real progress instead of just talk about it. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Chinwe.
You will stop it.
Gugu, is there anything you'd like to close by saying?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd like to say is thank you for having this conversation. I feel like it was a very crucial thing in my life. But yeah, I feel like these platforms are very useful for bringing together a wider African community. But then at the same time, I feel like they're also very crucial, as Chinwe said, about each of us telling our own narratives. And I feel like through learning your narratives that I feel like it infuses, it gives my narrative even greater purpose almost. And but yeah, I feel like these what's it called, platforms are very necessary, and this is what I'm getting from this conversation today.
Okay, thank you. Onyinye, any final thoughts from you?
Not really, just that thank you all for being part of this conversation. And like Gugu, I joined because at least here in Northern California, where I currently live, there's not a huge African community, and it's not quite as connected as I would like to see it. So I'm just grateful for something like this and excited for more in the future.
It's a pleasure, and we're glad to have you, and we hope to see you going forward. Vivian, is there anything that you would like to add and say in closing?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you for inviting me to this, to collaborate with you guys. As one of you guys said, I think it was Maz that said it, we need to do research to avoid duplicating the same thing twice. I would, more than anything, I would have loved this to have, like, Ezibota to have showed up, like, a few years ago before everyone created their different blogs or different sites, because we have so much duplications. And then there's people who, need that extra step, like Ezibota, to facilitate what they wanna get out there. And I can't stress enough the importance of collaboration. You're giving someone a step. You're giving someone a step and an opportunity, or people that could help get their message out. Let's say you have two different messages, but you need that middle ground. I feel like things like Ezibota offer that middle ground. And as far as my blog, for example, we are always looking for a way to have discussions, and the community blog, like the community chat like this, is the perfect thing. But I would have never known about it had Vila not sent out that invite to collaborate. So now, of course, I'm going to tell my readers you have to go to this, you have to join and see what it could bring to you. So I just want to say thank you. And this is just a perfect example of how collaboration could work, and just the importance and the need for it is really up there.
All right, Vivian. It's also a great and a great pleasure for us to have you, and just hearing your thoughts and what you have to say. We are definitely hoping to extend this collaboration even further into different types of initiatives, and we hope to have your support and your contribution going forward, because we believe that major or the most critical friends across the world to connect. And I think just from my side, as some concluding thoughts, in South Africa, maybe more specifically, I grew up in a very rural area. There wasn't much, I'd say, how would I put it? The resources. So, for example, there's a lot of areas that don't have electricity, running water, and stuff like that. And the only way to survive in settings like that is to unite with the people who live in your village. So if you don't have a spade and you need to dig a hole, neighbor might have a spade and you can go ask him for a spade. And if your neighbor needs something else, you might have it. And in a village sort of setup, if you don't collaborate, you die alone in ignorance. And I think we need those kind of values going forward as Africans, to know that without each other we are literally nothing. And in many cases, most people are just trying to just do their own thing. I'm trying to get my degree, I'm trying to buy my car, I'm trying to get my career going. And I think it's time we start thinking about us instead of I, because I will get somewhere, but us will get us to the moon. And I think we need to that heritage and that culture from Africa about collaborating in a village-like setting. That will work for us, and I believe it has just started with Ezibota, with our Africa, and going forward we will continue to collaborate with many people. So, guys, I think it has been a pleasure having you guys here. You all had great things to contribute. You all had great ideas. Vincent, Onyinye, Gugu, Mazi, Marilyn, if you're still watching, we really want to see you again. Please come back. Let's continue chatting. Let's continue sharing our ideas and see where we can take our initiative of connecting each other further. I just want to say, before we close the live broadcast, please don't log off the minute we end the live broadcast. Stick around. We'd like to take a few snapshots of you. I think Dina will pop back. We've missed her pretty face. I'm sure she'll pop back soon, and then she'll coordinate the taking of the pictures. Stick around.
Bobby?
Yes, Beulah?
Yes, I just want to remind everyone that's a participant in this chat, everyone watching live right now, and then everyone that will be watching the recorded version, that we will be having these community chats with different themes every single month. It will always be the last Saturday of every month, and it'll always be at the same time. in the event that these chats expand, we will offer a second time because we know that people have work schedules, people have classes, etc. But we're really trying to focus on consistency. So you can always expect this the last Saturday of every month at the same time. And another thing is, Ezibota community members, you'll have access to sign up for community chats. You'll have early registration. Non-members, you'll be able to sign up the week prior to the chat. So starting with the Saturday before the community chat, you'll be able to sign up. But members can sign up as soon as the current chat concludes. So you can sign up for the November chat now. So yeah, so then also if you see someone that you really connected with or you really like their input, if you're a member, you can just access the member directory to get their contact information. Say, you know, I was Gugu on the community chat. I want to connect with you. Let's collaborate, whatever. And people will be open to it. And we'll also be sending out contact information for everyone in the chat. Vincent, this time I will send it. Thank you. Sorry, Poppy, to cut you off.
It's all right. I think what you're saying is very necessary. And just to add, I'd really like to encourage everyone watching this, the guys that were part of the chat who are not members as yet, join up, sign up. The benefits are great. Our opportunity to collaborate and contribute to this great mission that we've embarked on of connecting all Africans together. We need you to be part of that. And the only way we can win is if we work together. So to all the guys watching this live broadcast, go to ezibota.com, sign up to be a member, and let's start communicating and share your ideas. Maybe there's something that we've overlooked that you think you can contribute to. You're more than welcome to contact, you know, Beulah, who is essentially our CEO. You can contact Chinwe, who is a senior member of the team. You can contact Dina. These guys are ready and willing to communicate with you. Sign up and let's get communicating. And I think, you know, it's one thing. I think Chinwe said this, that a lot of people, they talk about the war, but they're not ready to fight in the war. I think it's time for us now to roll up our sleeves and get dirty. And it's only going to start with a few of us, but we create a momentum, and people join hands and get things going. So guys, like I said, when we end the live broadcast, please don't leave, stick around. And we want to take a few snapshots. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you. As usual, to our senior team, Chinwe, Beulah, and Dina, thank you so much for your support, for making this work. Your dedication is definitely appreciated, and all good deeds do not go unrewarded. So your time will come as well. Gugu, I love the hat. I'm not sure if that's a hat actually.
Not a hat, it's my hair.
But I see something very cool on your head there, man. Very snazzy. Oninya, thanks for coming in. Vincent, as usual, my man, you always have great things to contribute. We really appreciate it. Come back, give us some more. You know, today you're wearing a very funky shirt. Is that the guy from Breaking Bad? That looks like Heisenberg, man. So anyway, so come back and share your stuff, man. We really appreciate it. So that being said, I'd just like to say that concludes the chat for today.